The nightmare always starts the same way. May 9th, 1943. The Pacific Ocean, dark as ink. Commander Marcus Thorne stands in the control room of USS Dace, his hand hovering over the firing button. Through the periscope, he sees her. A Japanese aircraft carrier, massive, vulnerable. The kind of target submarine commanders dream about their entire careers. Range, 1,400 yards. Angle on the bow, 70 degrees, target speed, 18 knots. The numbers flow through his mind like water. The torpedo data computer clicks and whirs, mechanical precision calculating angles, speeds, intersections. 6 Mark 14. Torpedoes loaded in the forward tubes. Each one 3,200 pounds of steel and high explosive. Each one capable of tearing a ship in half. His crew watches him, waiting, trusting. Fire 1. The submarine shudders. A torpedo launches into darkness. Fire 2, Fire 3, Fire 4, Fire 5, Fire 6. Ye 6 fish running hot and true. 6 chances to change the war. 6 opportunities for glory. And then Marcus Thorne wakes up. Every time he wakes up before the ending, before the part where all 6 torpedoes miss, before the sonar operator's voice cracks with disbelief, before the carrier steams away untouched, unharmed, unaware how close she came to dying, before Thorne's career nearly ends at 33 years old. November 28, 1944, 15 months later, 503 nights of the same dream. Thorne sits up in his bunk aboard USS ARCHERFISH, submarine SS-311, his undershirt soaked through with sweat despite the cold Pacific air circulating through the boat. 0300 hours, 3 in the morning, the graveyard watch. He doesn't bother trying to sleep again, never works. Instead, he pulls on his khaki uniform, laces his boots, and makes his way through the narrow passageways to the control room. The boat rocks gently beneath his feet. Familiar, comforting, home for the past 8 months. The watch officer nods as Thorne enters. No questions. The crew knows their captain doesn't sleep well. They know why. Everyone knows about May 9th. They called it the perfect opportunity. The shot every submarine commander waits for. USS Dace on patrol south of Truk Lagoon, hunting Japanese shipping lanes. The morning calm, no destroyers, no air cover. Just one fat carrier steaming northeast, probably heading back to Yokosuka for resupply. Thorne had stalked her for 3 hours. Patient, methodical, getting into position. The textbook approach, everything by the numbers, except he got the numbers wrong. Target speed, he estimated 18 knots. She was actually doing 22. That 4-knot difference meant his torpedoes arrived at empty ocean. The carrier passed through the firing solution 30 seconds before the first torpedo reached the intercept point. 6 weapons, 6 misses. The torpedo wakes gave away Dace's position. The carrier zigzagged away. Destroyers appeared on the horizon within the hour. Thorne took his boat deep and ran. He filed his patrol report with clinical precision. Attacked enemy carrier at 0930 hours. 6 torpedoes fired. No hits observed. Target escaped. No excuses, no explanations. Just failure in official language. The Admiral's response came 3 weeks later. Shore duty, effective immediately, not quite a court-martial, not quite a relief of command, just a quiet removal, a desk job at Pearl Harbor while other commanders racked up kills and collected medals. 8 months of watching younger officers brief their patrols. 8 months of hearing about tonnage sunk, ships destroyed, convoys scattered. 8 months of knowing he'd had his chance and blown it. Until March 15th, 1944. The Admiral called him in. No preamble, no small talk. USS Archerfish needs a captain. She's a good boat, experienced crew. They've had some success, but nothing spectacular. I'm giving you one more shot, Thorne. Don't miss. One more shot. The phrase echoed in his head during the entire flight to Mare Island. One more shot, like he was a ball player who struck out with bases loaded, like redemption was something you could schedule, like the ocean cared about second chances. Archerfish was a Belau-class fleet submarine, 312 feet of welded steel, diesel-electric propulsion, 10 torpedo tubes, 6 forward, 4 aft. She'd completed 3 war patrols under her previous captain. Decent record, a few freighters sunk, some escort vessels damaged, nothing that made headlines. The crew met him with professional courtesy and private skepticism. Thorne knew what they were thinking. He'd be thinking the same thing. This is the guy who missed, the commander who had a carrier in his sights and let her sail away. Why should we trust him? He didn't ask for their trust. He asked for their precision. We're going to drill torpedo solutions until you can calculate them in your sleep, he told them that first day. We're going to run practice attacks until the firing sequence is muscle memory. We're not going to be the fastest boat in the fleet. We're not going to be the luckiest. We're going to be the most precise. March to November, 8 months, 4 war patrols. They sank 2 freighters off the Philippines, damaged an oil tanker near Formosa, harassed a convoy southeast of Okinawa. Solid work, professional, nothing spectacular, nothing that erased May 9th. Lieutenant Robert Callahan, the executive officer, tried to talk to him about it once. Late night, officers' wardroom, halfway through their 3rd patrol. Skipper, the crew respects you. They know you're good. You don't have to prove anything. Thorne looked up from his charts. I'm not proving anything to the crew, Bobby. Then who? Thorne didn't answer. Didn't need to. They both knew. You don't erase failure with competence. You erase it with excellence, with the shot that matters, with the kill that changes everything. Thorne just hadn't found it yet. While Marcus Thorne was failing in the Pacific, the Japanese Empire was building the largest aircraft carrier the world had ever seen. Hull No. 110, laid down at Yokosuka Naval Arsenal in May 1940. Originally designed as the 3rd Yamato-class super battleship, sister ship to Yamato and Musashi, 72,000 tons of naval dominance, 18-inch guns that could fire shells the size of automobiles. But December 7, 1941, changed everything. Pearl Harbor proved what naval theorists had been arguing for years. Aircraft carriers, not battleships, were now the dominant capital ships. The age of the big gun was over. The age of the dive bomber had arrived. And 6 months later, Midway drove the lesson home with blood and fire. Japan lost 4 fleet carriers in a single day. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. The heart of the carrier, striking force that had attacked Pearl Harbor, gone in 5 minutes of American dive bombers. The Imperial Japanese Navy reeled from the loss. They needed carriers. Desperately. In June 1942, Hull 110 was reconceived, not a battleship, an aircraft carrier. But not just any carrier. This would be a carrier built with battleship bones, armored like a fortress, survivable like no carrier before. They named her Shinano. 16 inches of steel belt armor along the waterline, an armored flight deck 8 inches thick. Most carriers had wooden flight decks. Shinanos could withstand direct bomb hits. Watertight compartmentalization divided the ship into hundreds of sealed sections. The design philosophy was revolutionary. Build a carrier that could absorb punishment and keep fighting. Japanese naval architects calculated she could survive 20 torpedo hits. 20. Most carriers were lucky to survive 3. But building the world's largest aircraft carrier in the middle of a losing war creates problems. By 1944, Japan was dying. American submarines strangled supply lines. American bombers hit cities. Island after island fell. The empire was contracting, burning, collapsing. And Yokosuka Naval Arsenal, where Shinano was being built, was now within range of American B-29 bombers. In November 1944, the Imperial Navy made a decision. Commission Shinano immediately. Get her out of the shipyard before the bombers come. Move her to Curing Naval Base on the inland sea where she can be completed in safety. November the 19th, 1944. Shinano was officially commissioned into service. She wasn't complete, not even close. Watertight doors weren't all installed. Damage control systems weren't fully operational. The crew hadn't finished training. But she was seaworthy enough for one short voyage. 340 nautical miles down the Japanese coast. Hug the shoreline, travel at night. 3 destroyer escorts for protection. What could possibly go wrong? Captain Kenji Nakamura took command, 45 years old. A veteran of the China campaign and the early Pacific battles, he'd never commanded a ship this size. Nobody had. Shinano was unique, the largest warship afloat. Nakamura stood on the massive flight deck and looked down at the 3 destroyers that would escort them. They looked like toys. Shinano dwarfed everything around her. Aboard were 2,176 officers and men, plus hundreds of civilian workers still installing equipment. The ship carried 50 training aircraft, ammunition, fuel, supplies. Everything needed to make her operational once they reached Kure. The plan was simple. Depart November 28th at 1800 hours. Steam southwest through the night. Arrive at Kure by dawn on the 30th. 1 voyage, 1 night, 1 simple transit. November 28th, 1944, 1500 hours. 1,300 miles to the southeast, Commander Marcus Thorne sat in the wardroom of USS ARCHERFISH studying radio intercepts. The intelligence summaries were routine, Japanese shipping movements, convoy schedules, nothing unusual. But one line caught his eye. Large, unidentified warship departing Yokosuka vicinity, evening 28th November, classification unknown, course southwest. Thorne read it 3 times. Large, unidentified warship, not a battleship, not a cruiser. Those they knew, those they could identify from signal intelligence, from silhouettes, from patrol reports. Unknown meant something new, something they hadn't seen before. Lieutenant Callahan came into the wardroom, coffee cup in hand. "Skipper, we've got our patrol orders. Continue station keeping south of Tokyo Bay. Standard submarine interdiction." Thorne tapped the intelligence summary. "Bobby, read this." Callahan scanned the document, shrugged. "Could be anything. False report, misidentified freighter. You know how intel can be. Or it could be real. And if it's real, we chase a rumor across half the Pacific and miss actual targets." Thorne stood, walked to the chart table. His finger traced the Japanese coastline. Yokosuka to Kure. If you were moving a major warship, you'd follow the coast. Stay in Japanese-controlled waters. Avoid the open Pacific where American submarines prowled. If it's real, and if it's heading southwest, it'll pass through here. His finger stopped at the key strait. The gateway between Honshu and Shikoku Islands, the entrance to the inland sea. Callahan looked at the chart, looked at his captain. "That's a hell of a gamble, Mark." Thorne smiled, not a happy smile, a hunter's smile. "I'm done playing it safe, Bobby. Get the crew to battle stations. We're going hunting." November 28th, 1944, 1800 hours. Dusk settling over Tokyo Bay. Shinano's massive propellers began to turn. 72,000 tons of steel started moving. Captain Nakamura stood on the bridge, watching the shoreline recede. The 3 destroyers took up their positions. Isokaze, Yukikaze, Hamakaze. The formation steamed into the Pacific night. Aboard Archerfish, 200 miles to the south, Marcus Thorne stood in the conning tower. The boat ran on the surface, diesel engines charging batteries. Standard procedure. Vulnerable, but necessary. The sea was calm. Clear night. Stars brilliant overhead. 20:48 hours, 8:48 in the evening. Radar operator Marcus Webb hunched over his screen in the cramped radar shack. Watching. Waiting. and then the scope lit up. "Contact, bearing 090, range 25,000 yards. Webb's voice cracked slightly. He was 24 years old. This was his 4th patrol. "Multiple contacts, count 4 ships. Sir, the center return. I've never seen a signature this large." Thorne was in the conning tower in seconds. "What's the range?" 25,000 yards and closing. Speed approximately 18 knots. They're zigzagging." Thorne raised his binoculars, scanned the dark horizon, and then he saw them. 4 shapes, 3 smaller, destroyers, and in the center, something massive, a silhouette that shouldn't exist, larger than any carrier he'd ever seen, larger than any ship he'd studied in recognition training. His hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Not after 15 months of nightmares. "General quarters, all ahead flank. Come to course 090. The boat came alive. Men scrambling, hatches slamming, the dive klaxons silent. They needed surface speed to close the range. Callahan appeared at Thorne's elbow, raised his own binoculars, stared. "My God, what is that?" Thorne didn't answer. He was calculating. Distance, speed, angles. The target was moving at 18 knots. Archerfish could make 20 on the surface, but the target was zigzagging, maneuvering to throw off submarine attacks. They couldn't catch it by chasing. "Navigator!" Thorne's voice cut through the controlled chaos. "Plot a course for the Key Strait. Calculate where that formation will be in 3 hours if they maintain course southwest." The navigator, a young ensign named Peters, looked up, startled. "Sir, if we lose contact..." "Do it." Thorne made his decision in the space between heartbeats. Don't chase, predict, calculate, get ahead of them. May 9th, 1943, he'd guessed. Tonight, he would know. "All ahead flank. Make turns for 20 knots. We're going to beat them to the strait." Archerfish surged forward. Diesel engines screaming, racing through the night toward a rendezvous point that existed only in mathematics and faith. Behind them, invisible in the darkness, Shinano steamed southwest. Captain Nakamura confident. The coast of Japan, 10 miles to port. Destroyer escorts vigilant. They had no idea they were being hunted. November 28th, 1944. 2048 hours. The hunt had begun, and Marcus Thorne was done missing. 3 hours, that's all Marcus Thorne had to get ahead of a target moving at 18 knots through waters he'd never patrolled before. 3 hours to position his submarine in the path of something he couldn't even identify. 3 hours to prove he could calculate what he'd failed to guess 15 months ago. Archerfish tore through the Pacific night at maximum surface speed. 20 knots. The diesel engines roared. Black smoke poured from the exhaust. Every rivet in the hull vibrated. Men braced themselves against bulkheads as the boat slammed through swells. In the conning tower, Thorne stood over the chart table. Navigator Peters beside him, pencil, dividers, parallel rulers, the ancient tools of dead reckoning. "Target's last known position here." Peters marked the chart. "Bearing 090, 18 knots, zigzagging on base course 220. Thorne studied the Japanese coastline. The target had departed Yokosuka heading southwest. Limited options for a ship that size, too large for most harbors, too valuable to risk in open ocean with American submarines prowling. "They're heading for Kure," Thorne said. "Main naval base on the inland sea. Only facility that can handle something this big. Which means they'll transit the Key Strait." Peters traced the narrow passage between islands. "Right here." Thorne's finger stabbed the chart. 12 miles west of Cape Shinono. Deep water, direct route. If I was commanding that ship, I'd pass through this point between midnight and 0200. Callahan leaned over the table. Mark, if you're wrong, then we wasted a night and resumed patrol. Thorne's voice was flat, certain. But I'm not wrong. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was calculating. Distance, speed, time. The mathematics were clean, pure. No room for error because there was no room for doubt. May 9th, 1943. He'd estimated the carrier's speed, guessed, assumed, got it wrong by 4 knots and missed with 6 torpedoes. Tonight, he would know, or he would fail with certainty. How long to intercept point? Thorne asked. Peters checked his calculations. At current speed, 2 hours 40 minutes. We'll make it with 20 minutes to spare, enough time to get into position. Callahan pulled Thorne aside, spoke low. Skipper, the crew's with you, but this is a hell of a gamble. We're burning fuel, exposing ourselves on the surface, staking the entire patrol on a prediction. Thorne looked at his executive officer. Good man, loyal, deserved honesty. Bobby, I've spent 15 months playing it safe. 4 patrols, sinking freighters, nobody remembers. I'm not getting another chance like this. Whatever's out there, it's big, it's important, and I'm going to sink it. He paused, let the weight settle. Or die trying, Callahan nodded slowly. Then let's not die. Archerfish raced southwest, chasing a point on a chart, betting everything on mathematics and the cold logic of naval warfare. Behind them, invisible in the darkness, Shinano maintained her course, 18 knots, zigzagging every 6 minutes. Captain Nakamura, confident in his destroyers, his armor, his proximity to the Japanese coast, never knowing that 200 miles ahead a submarine was calculating his death. Midnight, November 29th, 1944. The date changed. A new day began. Archerfish reached the intercept point. Thorne ordered speed reduced to 4 knots, minimal way on. The boat drifted in the current, bow pointed northeast, waiting. Secure the diesels. Rig for silent running. The roar died. Sudden quiet. Just the gentle slosh of water against the hull. The creak of metal. Breathing. Radar contact? Marcus Webb hunched over his scope. Stared. Adjusted gain. Stared harder. Negative contact, sir. Scope is clear. Thorne checked his watch. 00:15. 15 minutes past midnight. They should have contact by now, if his calculations were correct, if the target maintained course and speed, if the zigzag pattern didn't throw off his predictions, if, the same word that haunted him since May 9th. Minutes crawled past, the control room silent except for the ping of the depth gauge, 60 feet, periscope depth, ready to dive if aircraft appeared, ready to attack if the target materialized. 00:30. Nothing. 00:45. Still nothing. Callahan shifted his weight. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. The question hung in the air like smoke. Did you get it wrong again? Thorne felt it creeping in. The doubt. The whisper. The voice that woke him every night at 3 in the morning. You missed once. You'll miss again. You don't have what it takes. He pushed it down, locked it away. Focused on the numbers, distance from last known position to intercept point. 68 nautical miles. Time elapsed, 3 hours, 12 minutes. Speed required, 21.2 knots. What if they slowed down? What if the zigzag was wider than he calculated? What if they took a different route? What if you're wrong? The control room clock ticked. 0100, 1 in the morning. Webb's voice shattered the silence. Contact, bearing 270, range 12,000 yards. Every man in the control room snapped to attention. Thorne was at the radar shack in 3 steps, looked over Webb's shoulder at the green scope. 4 distinct returns. Same formation, same signature, dead ahead, exactly where he'd predicted. Bearing 270, range 12,000 yards, Webb repeated. Speed 18 knots, course 225. Sir, it's them. Thorne felt something uncoil in his chest, not relief, not joy, something colder, harder, certainty. Diving stations, take her to periscope depth, make ready all forward tubes. The boat came alive, men moving with practiced efficiency, no wasted motion, no hesitation, months of drilling, months of preparation, all leading to this moment. Archerfish slipped beneath the surface, trimmed to 60 feet, silent, invisible, a predator in perfect position. Callahan appeared at Thorne's side. You called it, Mark, right on the money. Thorne didn't smile. Calling it doesn't sink ships. Now we have to execute. He moved to the periscope, gripped the handles, nodded to the diving officer. Upscope. The periscope hissed upward. Thorne pressed his face to the eyepiece, rotated slowly, searching. And then he saw her. Dear God in heaven, the ship filled his entire field of view. Monstrous, impossible. The flight deck stretched like a highway. The island's superstructure rose like a cliff face. Even in darkness, even at 6,000 yards, the sheer mass was overwhelming. Jesus Christ, Thorne whispered. This wasn't a fleet carrier. This was something else, something new, a floating fortress. He'd studied silhouettes of every Japanese carrier, Akagi, Kaga, Shokaku, Zuikaku, the carriers that struck Pearl Harbor, the carriers sunk at Midway. This matched none of them. Bobby, come look at this. Callahan took the periscope, stared. Sir, I don't recognize her class. Neither do I, which means she's brand new, secret, important enough to rush out of the shipyard despite the risks. Thorne's mind raced. A carrier this size, this heavily built. The Japanese wouldn't risk her unless circumstances were desperate, unless keeping her in Yokosuka was more dangerous than moving her incomplete, which meant she was vulnerable. Tracking party, begin solution. Target is a large aircraft carrier bearing 270, range now 10,000 yards, speed 18 knots. The fire control team went to work. The torpedo data computer clicked and whirred. Mechanical analog computation, gears and cams translating geometry into death. But there was a problem. The target was zigzagging. Every 6 minutes, Shinano altered course. 20 degrees to port, steady for 6 minutes, 20 degrees to starboard, steady for 6 minutes, standard anti-submarine doctrine, never present a steady target. Each course change invalidated the firing solution. Each zig and zag required new calculations, new bearing, new speed estimate, new intercept angle. Thorne watched through the periscope, timing the pattern, 6 minutes port, 6 minutes starboard, mechanical, predictable. Predictable could be exploited. We're going to stalk her, Thorne announced. Track the zigzag pattern, calculate her base course, wait for her to steady up. Skipper, that could take an hour, Peters said. Then it takes an hour. We've got all night. She doesn't know we're here. They settled into the hunt. Archerfish crept along at 3 knots, barely moving, maintaining position relative to the target. Periscope observations every 2 minutes, tracking, calculating, waiting. The crew felt the tension building. This was different from attacking a freighter, different from hitting a tanker. This was a capital ship, escorted, valuable, dangerous, and their captain was stalking her like a chess master playing 20 moves ahead. 20 minutes passed, 30, 40. Thorne never left the periscope, his hands steady on the grips, his eye pressed to the rubber cushion, watching, learning, understanding his target's rhythm. Callahan brought him coffee. Thorne drank without looking away from the scope. She's beautiful, Thorne murmured. Sir? The target. Look at her lines, the engineering. Someone built that ship with pride, with skill. Too bad we're going to sink her. 45 minutes into the stalk, young Peters spoke up from the plotting table. Skipper, the destroyers are maintaining station. They're not sweeping ahead, not pinging. They're not expecting contact this close to home waters. Complacency, Thorne said. They think they're safe. They think we wouldn't dare operate this close to Japan. Are they wrong? Callahan asked quietly. Thorne smiled, cold as the ocean outside. They're about to find out. 1 hour into the stalk. The zigzag pattern was clear now, plotted on the chart, predictable to the minute. Shinano would steady on her base course for exactly 6 minutes between course changes. 6 minutes, more than enough time to fire 6 torpedoes, but Thorne waited. Patience. The hardest discipline for any commander, waiting for the perfect shot instead of taking the good one, waiting for certainty. 1 hour, 15 minutes. Sir, she's completing her port leg, the plotter called out. She'll steady on course 225 in 30 seconds. Thorne watched through the periscope, saw Shinano's bow swing, steadying, coming to her base course, range 1,400 yards. The same range as May 9th, 1943. Thorne's hands didn't shake. Stand by forward tubes 1 through 6. Final bearing and shoot. The fire control party made the last calculations, feeding data into the torpedo data computer. Speed, bearing, angle on the bow, gyro angles for each torpedo, spread pattern, 6 torpedoes launched 4 seconds apart, slight angle between each weapon, maximize the probability of hits. Solution ready, Captain. Tube 1 ready, sir. Tube 2 ready, sir. All the way down the line, 6 torpedoes, 6 chances. Thorne took a breath, looked at the chronometer. 02:17 in the morning, November 29th, 1944. He thought about May 9th, about the 6 torpedoes that missed, about 8 months at a desk, about 4 patrols sinking ships nobody would remember, about second chances and redemption and whether the ocean cared about either one. His hand moved to the firing button. Fire 1. Archerfish shuddered. 3,200 pounds of torpedo leaving the tube, compressed air, hissing. The boat trimmed to compensate for the weight change. Fire 2. 4 seconds. Fire 3. 4 seconds. Fire 4. 4 seconds. Fire 5. 4 seconds. Fire 6. 6 fish running, hot, straight, normal. 46 knots through dark water toward a target that had no idea death was coming. All fish running hot, straight and normal, the sonar operator called out. Now came the wait. Torpedoes at 1,400 yards, running at 46 knots. Time to target, approximately 90 seconds. 90 seconds where anything could happen, where Shinano could turn, where torpedoes could malfunction, where destroyers could detect the wakes and counterattack. 90 seconds of absolute vulnerability. The control room went silent, men counting in their heads. The only sound was the whir of the torpedo data computer winding down, its job done. Thorne kept his eye pressed to the periscope, watching, waiting. 60 seconds, 70 seconds, 80 seconds. Through the periscope, he saw Shinano's massive hull, still steady on course, unaware. The destroyers maintaining station, no indication they detected the attack. 85 seconds. Thorne's jaw clenched. 90 seconds. The first explosion lit up the night like daylight. A column of water erupted from Shinano's starboard side amidships. Massive. The shockwave visible even at 1,400 yards. Hit! Someone shouted. 4 seconds later, the second explosion. Forward of the first. Another geyser. Another thunderclap rolling across the water. Third explosion. Fourth explosion. 4 hits. 4 out of 6 torpedoes slamming into the largest carrier ever built. The crew started to cheer. Thorne's voice cut through like a blade. "Silence!" Instant quiet. "Rig for depth charge, take her deep, all ahead flank. Dive angle 10 degrees, make your depth 200 feet, right full rudder, steady on course 090. "Sir, shouldn't we observe?" Peters began. "Now, mister!" Archerfish's bow tilted down. The boat dove, racing for the safety of deep water, because Thorne knew what came next. On the surface, Shinano's 3 destroyer escorts sprang into action, horns blaring, depth charges rolling off stern racks, destroyers turning toward where the torpedo wakes originated. Callahan grabbed a handhold as the boat dove. "Mark, 4 hits, you got her!" Thorne's face was stone. "Until I see wreckage, it's not confirmed, and right now those destroyers are going to try to kill us, so we run. We evade, we survive, then we assess." The first depth charge exploded 200 yards astern. The shockwave hammered the hull. Light bulbs shattered. Men grabbed overhead pipes. "Take her to 300 feet. Rig for silent running. Secure all non-essential equipment." Archerfish went quiet. Ghost quiet. Drifting deep beneath an angry ocean while destroyers hunted overhead. More explosions closer. The hull groaned. Cork insulation rained from the overhead, but Thorne had positioned perfectly. The destroyers were searching where the torpedoes launched from. Archerfish was already a half-mile away, diving deeper, disappearing. 6 hours they stayed deep. 6 hours of silent running while Shinano died somewhere above them. Because Thorne had gotten it right this time. 4 torpedoes, 4 hits, the perfect shot he'd been chasing for 15 months. But Marcus Thorne didn't celebrate. He'd learned something May 9th, 1943. In war, there are no perfect shots, just ones that hit. And ones you have to live with. 300 feet below the surface, USS ARCHERFISH drifted in darkness. Silent running. No movement. No sound except the gentle creak of pressure on the hull and the shallow breathing of 80 men trying to stay invisible. Above them, destroyer propellers thrashed. Sonar pings echoed through the water like hammers on steel. Depth charges exploded in the distance, each one a reminder that the ocean gave no guarantees, not to the hunted, not to the hunter. Commander Marcus Thorne stood motionless in the control room, hands clasped behind his back, listening, calculating, waiting. He had no idea if Shinano was sinking. No confirmation, no visual. 4 explosions didn't guarantee a kill. He'd learned that lesson the hard way. May 9th, 1943 taught him that hitting a target wasn't the same as sinking one. The destroyer sounds faded, moving away, searching in the wrong direction. Sonar contact bearing 030, range increasing, the sonar operator whispered. "They're moving off, sir." Callahan looked at Thorne. "Should we go to periscope depth? Observe the target?" "Negative. We stay deep. We stay quiet. We stay alive." "But sir, confirmation means nothing if we're dead, Bobby." Thorne's voice was flat, final. "We wait." 6 hours they waited, 6 hours at 300 feet while the destroyers searched. While Archerfish crept east at 2 knots, barely moving, putting distance between herself and the attack point. 6 hours while somewhere above them, in waters Thorne couldn't see, Shinano fought for her life. The 4 torpedoes hit Shinano at 0317, November the 29th, 1944. The first one struck amidships, starboard side, punched through the outer hull plating, detonated in boiler room number 3. 640 pounds of Torpex explosive. The blast killed everyone in the compartment instantly. Seawater flooded in. The watertight door, properly installed, sealed the space. Damage control doctrine worked. 1 compartment flooded. Ship stable. The second torpedo hit 20 feet forward. Another boiler room, another explosion, another sealed compartment, still manageable. The third and fourth torpedoes struck fore and aft of the first two, creating a line of breaches along Shinano's starboard side. 4 holes, 4 flooded compartments, 4 chances for the ship's legendary survivability to prove itself. Captain Nakamura rushed to the bridge. Damage reports flooded in, 4 torpedo hits, multiple compartments breached, but the ship was still making way, still under power. The list to starboard was noticeable but not critical. 5 degrees, Nakamura assessed. His ship was designed to survive 20 torpedo hits. She'd taken 4. The math said she'd survive. Maintain course and speed, he ordered. Damage control parties to their stations. We'll make Kure and effect repairs there. Titan, but the math was wrong. Because Shinano wasn't complete, the watertight doors that should have contained the flooding, 60% of them weren't installed. Temporary patches, gaps, openings where equipment was still being fitted. Water didn't care about percentages. Water found the gaps. By 0400, 1 hour after the attack, the list had increased to 10 degrees, water spreading through incomplete bulkheads, through passages that should have been sealed, through a ship that was supposed to be invulnerable but wasn't. The crew tried, damage control parties working desperately, shoring bulkheads, pumping water, but they'd been aboard less than 2 weeks. They didn't know the ship, didn't know which compartments connected, didn't know where the incomplete sections were. And the water kept spreading. By 0600, 3 hours after the torpedoes, the list was 18 degrees. Pumps running at maximum capacity couldn't keep up. Engine rooms starting to flood. Power generation compromised. Nakamura stood on a bridge that now tilted like a hillside, watching his unsinkable ship die from wounds she should have survived. At 0900, 6 hours after the attack, the list reached 30 degrees, equipment sliding across decks, men clinging to railings, the massive carrier rolling onto her side like a wounded whale. Nakamura gave the order he'd prayed he'd never give. Abandon ship. But abandoning a ship this size, listing this severely, with over 2,000 men aboard, there was no procedure for that. Lifeboats couldn't be launched from the high side. Life rafts had to be thrown into the water. Men jumped, some with life jackets, some without. The 3 destroyers moved in, pulling survivors from the water, but they couldn't get too close. If Shinano capsized, the suction could drag them down too. At 10:18, November the 29th, 1944, Shinano rolled completely onto her starboard side. The flight deck, 8 inches of armored steel, faced the water. For a moment, she floated there, sideways, impossible. Inside, men trapped in flooding compartments screamed. Water rushed through every opening, the sounds of dying metal, dying men, and then the bow went down. The stern rose. The massive propellers, 3 stories tall, rotated slowly in the morning air. The largest aircraft carrier ever built, 10 days in service, stood on end like a monument. At 10:57, she slid beneath the surface. 72,000 tons gone. 1,435 men went with her. Captain Nakamura survived, pulled from the water by destroyer Yukikaze. He watched his ship's grave, the oil slick, the debris, the few survivors still swimming, the unsinkable ship, sunk. Marcus Thorne knew none of this. At 0900, 6 hours after the attack, Archerfish finally surfaced. Thorne climbed to the bridge, scanned the horizon with binoculars, looking for wreckage, for survivors, for confirmation. The ocean was empty, no debris field, no oil slick. The destroyers were long gone, racing back to Japan with their survivors. "Anything?" Callahan asked. Thorne lowered the binoculars. "Nothing. She could be on the bottom, could be in Kure getting repairs, we don't know." 4 hits, Mark. We heard them. Hits don't mean sunk. Thorne's voice was hollow. "Take her down. Set course for Pearl. We're going home." Archerfish turned east, began the long journey back to Hawaii. Behind them, 35 miles down, Shinano rested on the ocean floor, her grave unmarked, unknown. And Thorne had no idea if he'd succeeded or failed again. Pearl Harbor. December 5th, 1944. Archerfish tied up at the submarine piers. Thorne filed his patrol report with the same clinical precision he'd used after May 9th. At 03:17, 29th of November 1944, fired 6 torpedoes at large unidentified aircraft carrier. Observed 4 hits. Target classification, unknown carrier, estimated displacement 70,000 plus tons. Result, unknown, lost contact due to destroyer counterattack. The intelligence officer read it again, looked up at Thorne. "Commander, 70,000 tons? No carrier in the Japanese fleet displaces 70,000 tons. I know what I saw. And 4 hits? 4 confirmed detonations. But you didn't observe her sinking." Thorne met his eyes. "No, we went deep to evade destroyers. When we surfaced 6 hours later, the ocean was empty." The intelligence officer made notes, skeptical notes. "We'll forward this to ONI, but Commander, without confirmation, without identification, this is just uncertain." Uncertain. The word followed Thorne like a shadow. December became January, January became February. The war ground on. Other submarines sank other ships. Confirmed kills, verified tonnage, names and numbers and certainty. Archerfish went back on patrol, sank a freighter off Formosa, damaged a tanker near the Philippines. Solid work, professional work. But no confirmation about the carrier. Thorne's nightmares changed. Now, when he woke at 3 in the morning, he didn't see May 9th anymore. He saw 4 explosions lighting up the darkness, felt the satisfying shudder of torpedoes leaving tubes, and heard his own voice asking, "Did I sink her? Or did I miss again?" Callahan found him one night in the wardroom, March 1945, 4 months after the attack. "Mark, you need to let it go." "Let what go?" "The uncertainty. You hit her 4 times. That's more than most submariners ever accomplish. The crew knows it. Command knows it. You proved yourself." Thorne stared at his coffee. "I proved I can hit a target. I proved that in May 43 too. Doesn't mean I sank her. You can't live like this." "Like what?" "Like every shot you fire might be another failure." Thorne looked at his friend, his executive officer, the man who'd stood by him through 4 patrols and 1 impossible night. "Bobby, you want to know what keeps me awake? It's not wondering if I missed. It's wondering if I hit, because if those 4 torpedoes sank that ship, and I don't even know it, what did it cost? How many men went down? What did I actually accomplish?" He paused. "At least when I missed in 43, nobody died." August 15th, 1945, Japan surrendered. The war ended. 6 years of slaughter, 50 million dead worldwide. And finally, silence. As American forces occupied Japan, documents were captured, naval records, ship logs, casualty reports. In September, a lieutenant commander from Naval Intelligence found Thorne in the officers' club at Pearl Harbor. "Commander Thorne, we need to talk about your patrol report from November the 44. Thorne set down his drink. The unidentified carrier. She wasn't unidentified, she had a name, Shinano. The name meant nothing to Thorne. "Never heard of her?" "You wouldn't have. She was Japan's most classified naval project, hull number 110. Originally laid down as a Yamato-class battleship, converted to an aircraft carrier, 72,800 tons, the largest aircraft carrier ever built." Thorne felt something cold settle in his stomach. Past tense. Built. She was commissioned November 19th, 1944. 10 days before you attacked her, she was on her maiden voyage. Yokosuka to Kure, first operational transit. And the intelligence officer opened a folder. Japanese records confirm she was attacked by submarine at 0317, November 29th. 4 torpedo hits. She sank at 10:57 that same morning, 7 hours and 40 minutes after your attack. The officers' club noise faded. Thorne heard only his own heartbeat. Casualties? 1,435 killed, 741 survived. 1,435, the number hung in the air like smoke. Commander Thorne, do you understand what this means? You sank the largest warship in history, the largest warship ever sunk by a submarine. It's a record. It'll probably never be broken. Thorne said nothing. There'll be a ceremony, Navy Cross. Commendations for your crew. This is the kind of kill that makes careers. Thorne stood, walked out of the officers' club without a word. He walked to the waterfront, stood on the pier, looked at the Pacific, looked at the ocean that had given him a second chance, the ocean that had let him prove he could calculate instead of guess, that he could execute the perfect shot. 1,435. He'd earned his redemption with 1,435 lives. The Navy Cross ceremony was held in October 1945. Formal dress whites, admirals, press photographers, the whole spectacle. They pinned the medal on Thorne's chest, second only to the Medal of Honor. The citation read like poetry. For extraordinary heroism in combat against enemy forces, Commander Thorne displayed exceptional tactical skill and courage in pressing home an attack against a superior enemy force, resulting in the destruction of the enemy's largest capital ship. Thorne stood at attention, accepted the medal, shook hands, said the right words, and felt nothing. That night, alone in his quarters, he opened the full intelligence file on Shinano, Japanese casualty lists. Names and ages, he read them, all 1,435, Tanaka Hiroshi, 18, Matsumoto Ken, 19, Yamamoto Takeshi, 20, on and on. Boys, young men, old salts with 30 years of service. He found Captain Kenji Nakamura in the survivors list, rescued by destroyer Yukikaze, survived the war, went home to Japan carrying the weight of his lost ship and lost crew. Thorne understood that weight now. He'd carried it since May 9th, 1943. The weight of failure. Now he carried something heavier, the weight of success. He took the Navy Cross medal from its case. Solid silver, ribbon of dark blue, beautiful piece of metalwork. He thought about putting it in a drawer, forgetting about it. But that would be a dishonor, not to himself, to the 1,435 who paid for it. So he kept it, displayed it, let people call him a hero, and counted the cost every night at 3 in the morning when the nightmares came. March 1968. 23 years later, Marcus Thorne stood on a pier in San Diego, 59 years old, retired from the Navy 10 years prior. Grey hair, lines on his face, the weight of decades. Before him, USS ARCHERFISH sat low in the water, decommissioned, stripped, scheduled to be towed out and sunk as a target. The boat that had given him redemption, the boat that had executed the perfect shot, going to the bottom. A handful of old crew members stood with him. Callahan, Webb, Peters, old men now, veterans, survivors. "Hell of a boat," Callahan said. "Best I ever served on," Thorne replied. They watched as the tugs positioned, as the bows swung toward open ocean. "Mark, you ever regret it?" Thorne knew what Callahan meant. November 29th, 1944. The shot. the kill, the cost. Every day, Bobby, and I'd do it again every day. That's what makes it hard. Why? Because it was my duty, my job. I did it better than anyone thought I could. I proved I wasn't the man who missed. I earned that medal. I earned my place in the history books. He paused, watched his boat heading out to sea. But I earned it with 1,435 lives, men who didn't get to go home, didn't get to see their kids grow up, didn't get old like us. They were the enemy, Mark. They were submariners, sailors, men who went to sea knowing the risks, just like us. The ocean doesn't care which flag you sail under. It takes who it takes. The tugs pulled Archerfish past the breakwater, the last time Thorne would see her above water. "You know what I think about?" Thorne said quietly. "I think about how I spent 15 months obsessed with erasing May 9th, proving I could make the perfect shot. And when I finally did, when I sank the biggest target any submarine ever engaged, it didn't erase anything. May 9th still happened. I still missed. The failure didn't go away. But you succeeded. I traded one weight for another, that's all." Thorne smiled without humor. "The ocean gave me a second chance. I took it. But the ocean always demands payment." They stood in silence as Archerfish disappeared over the horizon. That night, Thorne returned to his small apartment, took out the Navy Cross, looked at it under lamplight. On his desk, he kept a list, 1,435 names. He'd copied it from the intelligence files years ago, memorized most of them. He read a few names, like he did every night. Tanaka Hiroshi, Matsumoto Ken, Yamamoto Takeshi, his voice quiet. A private ritual, a debt acknowledged. He put the medal back in its case, turned off the light, and lay awake until 3 in the morning, like he had for 25 years, counting the cost, knowing it was worth it, knowing it would never stop hurting. The ocean remembers, so did Marcus Thorne. Epilogue. Commander Marcus Thorne died in June 1991, 82 years old, peacefully in his sleep. His obituary mentioned the Navy Cross, mentioned sinking Shinano, mentioned his record that still stands. It didn't mention the nightmares, the 3 a.m. vigils, the list of names, some weights you carry alone. Shinano rests on the Pacific floor 35 miles southeast of Cape Shiono, Japan. Depth, approximately 6,500 feet. She's never been found. Too deep. Location uncertain, but she's there with 1,435 souls. And somewhere in the same ocean, USS ARCHERFISH lies in shallower water off California, sunk as a target in 1968. The hunter and the hunted, both claimed by the sea, both remembered by men who understood that in war there are no perfect shots, just necessary ones, and the courage to take them and the strength to live with them after.